Good Thursday afternoon. Welcome to 580 Sports Talk. I'm Brendan Dworzinski. He is Dan Lucero, and we are with you for the next 3 hours. Plenty to get to today from around the world of sports, and we are so grateful and so thankful that you are along for the ride today. We've got some news and notes on the Kansas City Chiefs from around the NFL coming up here in just a few moments. Also, great news. Just heard it during the CBS news at the top of the hour, but great news on Damar Hamlin as well. It sounds like things at this point we can firmly and fairly say are progressing in a positive direction. Not out of the woods by any means, but great to hear some positive signs. So we'll touch on all that coming up here in just a moment. Later on this hour, Rick Peterson is going to join us from TopSports.news for our Invista Credit Union High School Whip Around. We'll play either or over under later on this hour as well. Along with Pistol, we've got a busy guest list for you today. Fulton will stop by at the top of the 4 o'clock hour for some crosstalk. And, of course, bottom of the 5 o'clock hour, as we do every single Thursday during the Chiefs season, we welcome in the voice of the Chiefs, Mitch Holthus, brought to you by Hy-Vee and Azura Credit Union. That's in the 5 o'clock hour today. We will also get to a lot of college basketball in the 4 o'clock hour, including the fact that Chris Beard is out at Texas. That's coming up. Don't forget, you can hit us up. Let us know whatever you're thinking about what we are talking about on the show today in the comments section on YouTube. That's right, our YouTube channel, Sports on 580 WIBW, streaming every single one of our shows. You can find us on YouTube. The comment section is open. Let us know whatever you're thinking. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube yet, I know you hear me say this almost every single day, but we would invite you to do so. You'll see the schedule for all of our live shows whenever they're ready to go live, all of our post-game recaps, Athlete of the Week video interviews, Washburn recaps, all of it you can find on our YouTube, Sports on 580 WIBW. And, of course, as always, you can hit us up on the Big O Tires text line. That number, as it always has been, 785-272-9429. That Chris Beard news was wild today. Not that it was necessarily the wrong thing to do. In fact, it was absolutely the right thing to do. I think anybody with a conscience would tell you that. I think a lot of people, if not most people, were surprised it took this long. I figured it was a lawyer thing. Like, got to make sure that the clause in his contract that if you're charged with a felony, you can be fired for cause. I'm assuming they had the lawyers make sure that was ironclad before they went through with anything.
That felt pretty black and white.
Yeah.
That felt like something they just could have invoked right away. And maybe this was them trying to give, judging by a letter that has been released from the University of Texas to Beard's lawyers, they were willing to let Beard resign, but the end result was always going to be this. However long it took to get past that particular impasse, it was going to end with Chris Beard not being the coach of Texas any longer.
The letter that you mentioned, and I know you're going to talk about this later on in the 4 o'clock hour too, the letter's really intense given like the corporate speak we often get from universities when bad things happen or when guys are fired or whatever it might end up being. They straight up said, it does not seem like Chris Beard is aware of the gravity of his situation, essentially. Like, he does not seem to understand the impact of what he did. And they, like you said, gave him the option. You can either resign if you tell us within the next, half hour or hour, whatever the short period of time was. You can either resign or we're going to fire you. He chose not to resign, and they said, you clearly don't understand what's going on. We don't care what you pick. You're fired. They did the right thing. And I think a lot of people were worried that they might not do the right thing. But if you read the police report, you read the complaints against him, it is, vile to say the least. It is horrific. And Texas did the right thing, and good for UT. I don't know what that means for their basketball team this year. I don't know what it means for their basketball team going forward, but I'm glad he's not going to be coaching at Texas or anywhere else here in the near future. We'll get to that more later on in the 4 o'clock hour today. Dan's got you for the second half of the show flying solo. I'm going to be out of here a little bit early for Washburn basketball coming up tonight, taking on Central Missouri, doubleheader over on Classic Country 106.9. Pregame at 5:15, tip at 5:30 between the Ichabods and the Jennies for the first game, the Mules for the second game, women and men, respectively. But we do have plenty to get to on the show today. We'll start with the Kansas City Chiefs. Generally speaking, pretty good news, I think, again, for day two on the injury front. No Sky Moore for sure this week. Mecole Hardman, Joe Thuney, Harrison Butker, all the guys we knew about who were already on the injury report, they are questionable for Saturday's game against the Raiders. Did I mention L'Jarius Sneed as well? Did I mention his name?
Sneed, Tooney, Hardman, and
Butker.
Butker are the four that are listed as questionable.
So, yeah, I missed out on Sneed. Individually, I think if you're the Chiefs, you don't have a major issue. Like, okay, you lose Sneed for one game, that's tough, but you can make up for it for one contest. You lose Tooney for one game, okay, you can fill in and make it work for one game if it's just him. That is, though, a big group. And I know Hardman hasn't played in several weeks. He just came off IR yesterday. But that is a pretty substantial group. It's not a huge group. It's not like the Broncos last week where they had 5 guys who were questionable and 4 who were out and 6 others who were on the injury report during the week. It's a fairly small group overall for the Chiefs, but that's a pretty impactful group, too.
Yeah, it's significant. It's a Pro Bowler at left guard. It's a really important piece in your secondary, probably your best cornerback. And it is your kicker. And though Butker's struggles this season have certainly been well documented here and elsewhere, he's still a more trustworthy option for the Chiefs than anybody they might find to pluck off the street as a free agent this week. The Chiefs did still indicate that they might like to have somebody on standby, essentially. They're going to have a kicker on standby this week just in case Butker's back tightens up again and we get to Saturday and he just can't go. But the fact that he practiced today, I would think, is a pretty good sign that he is going to be able to be part of the proceedings on Saturday. With Tooney, obviously, he's a stud, and you miss him when he's not out there, and especially because he's always out there. Until this year, I don't think he'd missed a start in his NFL career, or he'd only missed one start. Been one of the most durable guys in the league, and he's dealt with some injuries to his ankle this year that have kept him out for a couple of games and could keep him out on Saturday. But even with that, like with Nick Allegretti filling in at left guard, you feel pretty good. Allegretti has played well in the spots where he's had to fill in for Tooney earlier this year.
And played a lot, too, over the course of his career.
Yeah, this isn't a rookie. This is a guy who's been around and knows what you're trying to get accomplished up front. So you feel like you're in good hands if Tooney is out. Sneed's the biggie for me because then you're going with 3 rookie cornerbacks across your secondary. You're leaning on Jalen Watson and Joshua Williams and Trent McDuffie. And not only are you losing the one veteran in that group in Sneed, but you're also losing all the things that he can do, blitzing and run support and the ability to line up in the slot or line up on the outside. They can mix and match. If the Chiefs had the idea of maybe wanting to have somebody follow Davante Adams around the field on Saturday, it would certainly have been Sneed, much like it was Sneed who drew the DK Metcalf assignment against Seattle a couple of weeks ago. So if Sneed can't go, that's a big one. That's significant. Now, should the Chiefs be able to beat the Raiders without any of these guys? Yeah, they should. They're better than the Raiders and should be able to win. But the Sneed absence would be the one that would jump off the page to me that would be the hardest for the Chiefs to overcome.
Davante Adams, in case you had forgotten, is still incredible. He has the NFL lead in touchdown receptions this year with 14. He has the new Raiders single season record, and not even one that you can say, yeah, but it happened in 17 games. He set it in 16. Okay, he's going to fly by that record. The last time these two teams played, he only had 3 catches. He also had 124 yards and 2 touchdowns. Okay, that's Randy Moss numbers right there, all right, on just those 3 catches. He is still truly great. And Sneed, to me, would also be the biggest concern. I think with an offensive injury, you can game plan around it a little bit more than you can a defensive injury because offenses dictate the game in the NFL. Unless you have a truly great defense, generally speaking, offenses dictate how the game is played in this modern era of the NFL. You don't have Sneed out there. That's going to make things a lot more difficult on a very young secondary. And it's going to impact the safeties as well, not just the corners, because they're, Thornhill and Reed and Cook, they're going to be asked to do a lot more as well. So I would agree that that is the biggest concern of the group. Although I'd be lying if I didn't say I'm still concerned about replacing Harrison Butker. As unreliable as he's been, we've also seen Matt Amendola and Matthew Wright this year, and neither of those experiences went very well for the Chiefs.
Yeah, Amendola flat cost them the Colts game.
Mhm.
And Matthew Wright, while he did make that 150, I think it was 58, 59 yarder against the Raiders, was also not the most reliable. Like, neither of those guys are as good as Butker at his best. What we haven't seen Butker at his best this season, which again, we've documented that, and so has every other medium that talks even for 2 seconds about the Kansas City Chiefs.
I think the Chiefs are still going to be fine in this game against the Raiders, and we'll get our final picks coming up on tomorrow's show. But I will say this, and we talked about this earlier today off the air. The Chiefs this season, at least, and if you look in different places that maybe came up with different numbers and different spreads as the final number, you might see a slightly different result. But according to covers.com, the Chiefs this year are 4-11-1 against the spread. I know Team Rankings has it at 5-10-1. Here's what's the same about those two things. It stinks. It's not very good. The Chiefs, when they win, have been winning a lot of close games, even though they are expected to win by a lot. And maybe this is a little bit of a preview for our picks and keys coming up tomorrow. The Chiefs are favored by 9.5 points in this game.
Mm-hmm.
Jarrett Stidham's probably playing for his career to a degree, like playing for, hey, I really can be more than just a fill-in backup guy.
The modern version of that Matt Flynn contract that he got after one big game with the Packers is it's 60 minutes of good football away.
9.5 points is the spread.
Mm-hmm.
I said this to you earlier today. I feel like the smart play is probably the Raiders, even if I think the Chiefs are way better as a team and are going to win.
So a lot of people, I think, are probably looking at that number and saying, well, they beat the Broncos by 6-3, and they beat the Texans by 6 and weren't close to covering in those games. And why should they be expected to cover a big number against an inferior opponent? I think the reason that it's the number that it is because when you're factoring in a prediction for the game, which is what in the end a point spread is. It's a prediction. And when you're making a prediction, you're not factoring the volatile stuff that has cost the Chiefs dearly all year. You're not really factoring in turnovers and field position off of turnovers. You're not factoring in special teams miscues. You're kind of just looking at the raw data of this team's offense is this team's defense is this is how they match up. And this is what our numbers are telling us should happen if all of the little things, so to speak, if all of the stuff that is volatile from game to game is equal. You're trying to strip the value of those things out. And if there are no turnovers and no special teams catastrophes, the Chiefs probably should be favored by 9.5, 10 points. What did you see in the Seahawks game, right? That was a 10-point spread, wasn't it?
I believe it was.
Yeah, that was 10.5 point spread. Chiefs won that game handily, won it by 14 because they didn't turn the ball over. There was one turnover in that game, and it came pretty late on with the Chiefs pretty in control of the game. So that's why you're seeing the Chiefs not cover spreads and win uncomfortably. If you want to take the Vegas, the gambling element out of it, why they aren't winning games comfortably. And we've talked about this. The special teams has been bad. The turnover problem has persisted. And a lot of the turnovers have been maximally impactful when it comes to the Chiefs not scoring points or the other team being in a position where they can't help but score a touchdown. So if those things don't happen on Saturday, the Chiefs should win. And I cover that spread, and I think do so pretty handily. But when it keeps happening, because it does keep happening to the Chiefs, they do keep making the special teams mistake. They do keep turning the ball over in bad spots, either deep in their own red zone or backed up in their own territory in the red zone. Like maximum pain inflicted by these turnovers. If it keeps happening, don't you have to bake that into what you expect from the Chiefs?
To use the moody teenage, going through puberty Facebook post or tweet or Instagram post, when people say, when someone tells you who they are, believe them, when you got dumped by like your junior year boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever.
Yes.
I mean, that's the Chiefs right now, right? Like, the Chiefs are really good with a great head coach and a good offensive scheme.
And a ceiling as high as any team in football.
And the best quarterback in the league. And they do not value possession.
And a penchant for self-sabotage.
And that's what they are. That it's I guess to use a more direct football analogy, the Bill Parcells quote, "You are what your record says you are," even though I don't necessarily know that to be true all the time. I think you are what the tape says you have been over the course of the last 17 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And that is all of those things, including they give the ball away too often. Although that does, and I know you're just going to say something. I'm sorry for jumping in front. I saw this from ESPN today. It was published yesterday. Their most recent power rankings, and power rankings is just an opinion. It's just a group of opinions turned into a list. But I did find it interesting that the Chiefs not only had been number one the previous couple of weeks, they have remained at number one over the previous couple of weeks, including this one. Like right now, I would not unequivocally put the Chiefs as the number one team in the NFL. I don't think they have played like that. I do think that the three best teams in the NFL are all in the AFC, and the Chiefs have an argument for that. I think it's the Chiefs, I think it's the Bengals, and I think it's the Bills right now. I'd even put them ahead of the Eagles because when Hurts is back, they'll be better. But even there's been a little bit of, adversity, I guess you could expect, or you could say, which is to be expected late in the season. But I think there have been a few chinks in their armor as well as of late. But I don't think I would unequivocally put the Chiefs at the very top of the ladder, which does make me question, is our view, I guess I'm speaking for myself specifically at that point, but is our view or my view of the Chiefs a little bit more critical because we talk about them every day? We watch every game with a more critical eye. We watch the game and then immediately recap it, and we see it every day, and we have these high expectations, and we listen to the press conferences and post-game media and all of that. Are we overly critical because we are maybe not quite as high, or not even quite as high, because we know they can be great? I just don't think they have been as of the recent couple of weeks. Are we being more critical of them? Or is it a fair criticism that maybe the rest of the NFL is not paying attention to?
I think it depends on what you believe about the turnover woes. Are they one game away from not having those matter? Or is it, again, just kind of baked into the experience of Chiefs football? Are you just counting on the Chiefs are going to turn it over twice a game, and they're going to do so in the worst possible situations to turn the ball over? If Kadarius Toney recovers his own fumbled punt last week, or if that ball bounces out of bounds, takes a funny hop and it caroms out of bounds, or the Broncos can't quite get a hold of it, and the Chiefs recover that punt, then do they cover the 14.5? Do they go on to cover that? What was it? 13.5, 14-point spread against the Broncos? Do they win comfortably in that game? The path to them doing so is a lot clearer. So, and that's the kind of thing that, observers will tell you fumble luck is a real thing. And the Chiefs haven't had great fumble luck this year, particularly on offense. They have lost a lot of their own fumbles. So I think that maybe we are overly critical because we are so close to the situation where if you aren't as close to it, or you aren't watching every single snap of every single game, you look at the turnover issues, or you look at Mahomes having thrown an interception in the end zone and say, well, he's not going to repeat that. Like that's not going to keep happening. Like the fumble luck is going to even out potentially. The kicker with an established track record is going to get back on track by the time the playoffs roll along. And I think it's okay to think that those things are going to happen. It's totally reasonable to think once they get into the postseason, they're going to be more focused. They're going to be more dialed in. Mahomes isn't going to make the big mistake and underthrow a pass in the red zone. And they're going to tighten up the ship on special teams. They're just not going to field punts. If it might cost them field position, they'll just let punts land and bounce. And that Butker will be okay if they get a bye, gets them another week to rest and get healthier. Like, that's a totally reasonable thing to believe about the Chiefs. And if you believe those things to be true, then yeah, you probably believe unequivocally they're the number one team in the league, because they are, their record says they are 13-3, pretty damn good. So there's that. But if you are of the mind that what you keep seeing every week, 10 of the last 11 weeks, Chiefs turn the ball over in a game. And a lot of those weeks, it's been more than once. If you suspect that's going to keep happening, if you suspect there is no imminent rebound for Harrison Butker, then your skepticism is entirely well-founded. So I guess it depends on what color the glasses are that you're looking at the Kansas City Chiefs through.
Is Harrison Butker the most injured kicker of all time?
This year?
This year. Like, an ankle injury that made him miss a few weeks and has probably hampered his performance all year, and now a back issue that might keep him out in week 18. Chiefs better get that number one seed. I think they could use a rest and maybe a little bit of a reset as well. I mean, they've played every week. What was it, week 7 or No, week 8 was their bye. They played 7 straight, had a week off, then had Tennessee in week 9. By the way, real quick, what do you think is going to happen with the number 1 seed in the AFC? Multiple reports have come in over the last 18 hours or so that they're just not going to play Bills Bengals, which at this point is probably the right thing to do.
Yeah, the Associated Press even is reporting that at this point.
That's going to happen.
That is the likeliest outcome. So the Bills and the Bengals will play 16 and everybody else will play 17. I think that the contortions that the NFL would have to do or have been proposed, floated out there by like Mike Florio, Pro Football Talk, or we've seen Adam Schefter report some things, Ian Rappaport report some possible solutions. But honestly, you settle things on the field, and if things can't be settled on the field, then you just go with what you got. You know, you don't make these teams jump through hoops. Like there's been a proposal, well, let's just add an extra playoff team so nobody gets a bye. And then you have to do that in the NFC. And that is the damn dumbest thing I've ever heard in my entire life.
Insanely dumb.
Absolutely just the stupidest thing in the world. That's not going to happen. Like, you've got teams that have already packed it in because they're eliminated from playoff contention. You're going to come to them on Friday and say, oh, hey, surprise.
You mean like the team the Chiefs are playing this weekend in the Raiders who went to Jarrett Stidham?
Yes.
Because they had no chance?
Or the Manders, who are going to start Sam Howell instead of Taylor Heineke.
By the way, I got to give props to Taylor Heineke. He showed up at Commanders media availability today in a Shane Falco jersey. Shout out to my guy.
I wonder if that's a coded message of some kind.
It might be.
If he's trying to say something. But, and then there's another thought that I guess a proposal. I don't know how real these proposals are, but there's a thought that you would make whoever the number 1 seed by winning percentage in the AFC, you would make them decide, do you want the bye or do you want home field advantage? So if you get the bye, then if you take the bye, the playoffs unfold as normal. If you take home field, then you would play the number 7 seed while the number 2 seed gets a bye, and then you would play the playoffs would proceed as normal after that. You take the bye 101 times out of 100. Like that's a total no-brainer.
Yep.
You take the bye before you take home field advantage. It's one less chance to lose.
Yeah.
Just simple math is one less chance to lose before you get to the Super Bowl.
A lot of things can go wrong in 60 minutes.
Yes.
A lot of them. So I'm with you on that.
Yeah. So that would be such a no-brainer, in fact, that I think that's a non-starter as a conversation because there's no drama in that. You don't have the opportunity to settle things fairly on the field, and that's unfortunate. Like if this had all happened in week 4, you'd move some bye weeks around. If it happened in week 8, you'd move some bye weeks around. You'd have maybe some more time to come up with a contingency plan, or there'd be more weeks where things shook out. We've only got 1 week for things to shake out, but the way you settle it is the way you settle it in other sports. You go by win percentage. Like that's, if there's for some reason you can't play a game, you go by win percentage. 14 wins out of 17 is more than 13 wins out of 16. And the Chiefs would get the number 1 seed. If they take care of business, they would get the 1. They would have earned the 1 with their play on the field.
And
I just think that's the way forward because it impacts fewer teams. It's just less to figure out. It's just an easy solution. You go by win percentage. Is it unsatisfying? You bet. But in the grand scheme, it's the best way to move forward.
And I feel bad for the Bills. I, honest to God, do feel bad because they're put in a really bad situation. But at some point,
can they not go beat the Chiefs at Arrowhead? Didn't we just see them do that 2 months ago?
Right. And the thing is, too, like, the more you try to correct things and make everybody happy, the further away from reality and plausibility you get. It just doesn't make sense.
Ask any parents of multiple children. Like when you try and be fair and you try and make things equal for like one of your kids, don't you inevitably upset all the other ones?
Right. We've got to take a quick break. We'll talk more NFL, more Chiefs later on in the show with Mitch Holthus. Right now, though, we'll take a timeout, come back, play some either or over under here on 580 Sports Talk. Brendan and Dan back with you on 580 Sports Talk on this first Thursday of the year 2023. Thanks so much for being with us this afternoon. Dan, we do have a question from the YouTube stream. You can find us on YouTube and join in the comments section. Sports on 580 WIBW is the YouTube channel. Dan, we've got a question asking if you're wearing a throwback Twins hat today.
No, the TC in purple actually stands for Texas Christian. I'm showing a little Big 12 solidarity. This is a TCU Horned Frogs throwback baseball program cap. So I thought the cream and the purple TC looked sweet, and it was on sale on Fanatics one day, and I bought it. That's how I choose a lot of my hats. Does it look cool?
Yeah, that's how I pick most of mine. No, much respect for that. Speaking of TCU, for either or over under, we're going to go to the hardwood.
Okay.
Last night, and I know you're going to talk about this game a little bit later on, TCU Baylor, great game, great ending to the game.
Phenomenal ending.
Who finishes higher in the Big 12 standings, TCU or Baylor?
I like that. I'm going to go with TCU because I don't think Baylor can guard anybody.
Which is wild.
Yeah, it's weird to say that about Baylor. It makes you think that like Jerome Tang was the defensive coordinator or something of that program. And with him leaving, they can't figure out how to guard. I don't know what it is. But they are. They're a bit of a different looking Baylor team. They don't have the presence in the post that they've had in recent years. They're really good at the guard spots, Flagler, Cryer, and Keontae George, but they don't defend. And maybe it's because they think they're better at scoring from the wing than they used to be, and they're just a little lax on defense, and maybe Scott Drew gets that tightened up as the year goes on. But right now, that's a Baylor team that can't really guard. TCU, meanwhile, like what Mike Miles did in the final minute last night, Mike Miles was preseason Big 12 player of the year, right? Mm-hmm. And you and I both expressed some skepticism about Mike Miles being the preseason Big 12 player of the year because he felt like a bit of a gunner, bit of a one-dimensional scorer. He's been a lot more responsible for creating for others, and he created that great look for Chuck O'Bannon Jr. to make the game-winning shot out of the corner last night. So he's added some elements to his game. They've got shooting. They've got a big guy in Eddie Lampkin that I really like a lot. I got a lot of time for Jamie Dixon, even though he hasn't been a great tournament coach. He's always been a really good regular season coach. Yeah, I'm going to buy stock on TCU. I think they've rebounded from their early difficulties, some of which happened without Mike Miles in the lineup. And I think they will finish. They look like a team that'll finish top 3 in the league to me. Baylor feels more like a top 5.
The 3 best teams in the Big 12 right now, you can make a 3-way Venn diagram of TCU, K-State, and Kansas. KU and K-State in Kansas. KU and TCU, I'm still working on the overlap there. And then K-State and TCU, both purple. And those are your best teams in the Big 12 right now. I'm going to go with TCU as well. I think because of how good Baylor has been, and this happens with really good teams often, maybe not always, but often, even when they bring back a lot of good players and they've been good for quite some time, we sort of discount how much they lost. You look at what they lost from last year's team. Like Jeremy Sohan, pretty good player, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And now a major contributor for the Spurs.
And a great defender, switchable defender.
Yeah. Very, very good defender. Kendall Brown probably was a little disappointing given the hype that he brought into Baylor. Still a good player, though. Matthew Meyer, you don't think of him as a defensive player, but obviously.
But he was. He's a hard worker on that end. Took a lot of charges.
And then you just generally think of him as like a big man shooter, but obviously he was important to that team. And James Akinjo as well, who is obviously incredibly important for them. That's a lot of talent and a lot of defense and just a lot of effort that Baylor lost from last season. And yes, they add Keontae George, but I just don't think that we as a college basketball consuming public really gave enough credit to, damn, they lost a lot last year. And I'm not surprised that they took a little bit of a step back. I think TCU, this feels like one of those, like, this is as good as it'll get with this group kind of years because Miles is a veteran, O'Bannon's a veteran, Lampkin is a year older. I think they're going to be a second weekend caliber team this year, so I would take TCU in that matchup.
Not asking you to pick a winner for my either or over under, but Saturday, the Titans and the Jaguars play with the AFC South on the line. Who's the scarier playoff opponent, Titans or Jags?
Oh, it's Jacksonville, and I don't think it's close. And the reason why, more than anything, comes down to the quarterback, but I think it also comes down to confidence. Like right now, you get a first-round playoff match. Let's say Let's say it's the Chiefs. The Chiefs decide, you know what? We actually want to rest Patrick Mahomes and Kelsey and literally every starter we have. We don't care if we get the 2 seed. We're going to do the Bills a solid, like that one guy on Twitter said the other day. Oh, they should deny the number 1 seed. What a dumb take. Anyway, let's say they end up with a wild card round game, and they play one of those 2 teams. Well, I guess that wouldn't make sense. You know what I'm getting at.
Yes.
Would you rather face Joshua Dobbs or Trevor Lawrence, who is getting better every single week? I'd rather face Joshua Dobbs, personally. I'd be okay with that. Even though Derrick Henry is going to be back, and it sounds like Jeffrey Simmons is going to be back as well. I still think Jacksonville has the better offense right now. They've got the better quarterback play right now. They're just playing with a ton of confidence. They are on a roll. Peterson knows what he's doing. Peterson knows what he's doing at this time of year. He's got a Super Bowl. He's got multiple playoff wins. Vrabel's a great coach. I just don't think they have the juice right now or the confidence, frankly, because they have been clinging to hope in that AFC South. They're lucky they had that big, long stretch of wins. Otherwise, this division might have been decided 2 weeks ago.
All good points. Difficult to refute any of them. I'll still be the contrarian and say the Titans are the scarier opponent because the way they play and the playoff experience that they have, I think makes them a tougher out in January. None of those Jacksonville players have played a real meaningful game. We're going to see, Trevor Lawrence playing a lot of meaningful games in college, but
it's a different beast.
Yeah. NFL playoff football, very different deal. And I think that the Titans are kind of built for that in a way that we'll see if the Jaguars are.
Incredible disrespect to one-time playoff participant Christian Kirk.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's it, though. That might legitimately be it.
ETN.
Well, yeah, but again, not in the NFL.
Right.
But yeah, I guess he's...
Yeah, Christian. Oh, yeah, you meant the NFL. Yeah, Christian Kirk with the Cardinals. Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, no, A&M never made it to the playoff. They never got there. We got to take a break. Rick Peterson of TopSports.news joins us next on 580 Sports Talk. Peterson covers all things prep sports and Washburn sports from around Topeka and Shawnee County for TopSports.news. And he joins us every single Thursday, bottom of the 3 o'clock hour, for the Invista Credit Union High School Whip Around. Find all of his great work at TopSports.news. And you can find him on social media as well, on Twitter at Peterson_Rick. Pistol, did you make it to midnight on New Year's Eve? Do we have Pistol?
I'm here.
There's Pistol. Hey, Pistol,
Here.
did you make it to midnight on New Year's?
I did, and yeah, fairly easily. I'm not saying I stayed up a long time after that, but I made it to midnight.
Hey, very happy to hear that. We all made it this year. That's good to hear. Coming up tonight, before we look ahead to the basketball this weekend, do you have preps to cover tonight, or will you be headed to Lee Arena for some Washburn hoops?
Yeah, I'll be headed to Lee Arena, and then I have somebody over at the Seaman game.
Well, that's going to be a fun contest for sure as well. Real quick, Pistol, let's get your thoughts on what you're expecting to see out of the Ichabod's tonight, both women first and then the men.
Well, the women are going to have a tough time. I mean, they got a tough battle. Number 7 ranked Jenny, so they'll have to play their best. And, like we always say, stay in it as long as they can and give themselves a chance. Men, I look for the men to bounce back. They had a tough time on the road last Saturday, I think it was, and they need to bounce back, and I think they will.
They've been really good against Central Mo in the last couple of years. 7 of their last 8 games head-to-head, Washburn has won. That's coming up tonight. I'll be on the call. That one, 5:15 pregame, 5:30 tip-off over on Classic Country 106.9. As for the high school hoops, Pistol, did any scores, any performances really stand out to you Tuesday night as everybody got back in action after the holiday break?
No, I was at Emporia to watch the Emporia Hayden doubleheader, and there were a couple good games. I mean, the Hayden girls got down early and came back and got within 3 in the fourth quarter and ended up losing by 9, but that's a very good Emporia team. And then the boys game was another game like the first time those teams played, went down to the wire. And I think it ended up a 7-point game, but it was close the whole way. And then last night I saw Topeka High, and Topeka High girls played very, very well, won their 7th straight game. The boys had a juggernaut. They were going up against a juggernaut. Anybody knows anything about high school sports in Kansas knows Blue Valley Northwest. And High stayed in the game in the first half, and then it got ugly in the second half, but that kind of happens when you're playing the Huskies. So some good games. I think the game that I was really keeping an eye on, that I had somebody else going to that game, was the Rossville Silver Lake girls. And it kind of went down to the wire too, but Silver Lake did a good job and kind of pulled away at the end to stay undefeated.
We're talking to Rick Peterson from TopSports.news. It's our Invista Credit Union High School whip around here on 580 Sports Talk. You can follow Pistol on Twitter at Peterson_Rick. And of course, you can go check out all of his great work at TopSports.news. Speaking of Topeka High, and I want to focus on the boys here because we know, like you said, Pistol, the girls have been on a roll as of late. Under first-year head coach Gio Lyons, though, where do you think that Topeka High is in terms of their growth as a program, and where does he feel like they are right now, halfway, or not quite halfway through his first season at the helm of the program?
Well, I think, they got work to do. They're young, but, it really hurt them when 6'6" B.J. Kennedy decided to, sit out the season. So they got a long ways to go, but I think, last night, Gio and I sat there after that game against Blue Valley Northwest, and he said he loves their attitude, he loves their enthusiasm, and so he thinks he likes where they're going. Obviously, all coaches would like to get there quicker, but he sees progress, and they got some kids that can shoot the ball. They're very undersized, and it's just going to take some time.
Some other action from earlier this week, Washburn Rural, they picked up a doubleheader sweep over Junction City. The Lady Blues were dominant, 50-9 over Junction City. Meanwhile, hard-fought game for the Washburn Rural boys. I know they were up big for a while. Gap got a little bit closer at the end. Starting on the boys' side, what do you make of where this Washburn Rural team is right now? Again, first-year head coach. We talked about them a couple weeks ago and the strides they were already making. What do you know about this team and how they feel about where they are at this point in the first season under Alex Hutchins?
Well, I think they have to feel good. I mean, any time you beat Wichita Heights, that's a feather in your cap. And then to come back, Junction City has always played everybody tough on the boys' side, and for them to get that win, they're sitting 4-2, I believe, and they're playing well. Jack Batchelor's doing what they expected Jack Batchelor to do, but I think the rest of their team's very balanced, and I think that's they're. I tell you what, the thing that they're doing is playing very good defense, and defense will keep you in the hunt, and defense will give you a chance to win games.
Our game coming up tomorrow night, our 580 Preps game of the week. We are headed to Hayden for Washburn Rural versus Hayden, and specifically on the boys' side, Pistol, I think that is shaping up to be a really good matchup.
Yeah, I think it will. I don't know who I would pick in that game. I think Hayden relies quite a bit on their outside shooting, and I think they had 11 threes or something the other night. But I also think they want to make sure they get the ball into Big Joe inside, because Joe Otting played well again the other night, and he's off to a great start. Washburn Rural, we just talked about it. I think that's a game that goes down to the wire.
As for the girls matchup there, we were just talking about how Washburn Rural, they're playing really well. After a little bit of a slow start to the season, they've really taken off, had the 41-point win earlier this week over a bit of a down Junction City team. That's, meanwhile, a real tough schedule for the Hayden girls to go back-to-back, taking on a really good Emporia team in Class 5A and then a really good Washburn Rural team in Class 6A.
Yeah, it is, but I like the way Hayden's playing, and, Briley Myers playing really well. Lauren Sandstrom's a good player. Greco stepped up and hit a couple of threes the other night that kept them in the ball game. I think they want to be competitive in these games. And then, if you can be in competitive, and they were competitive against Emporia, if you can be competitive in these back-to-back games, it bodes well for you after that. Obviously Topeka High is going to be really good too, but there's a lot of games on their schedule that I think the Wildcats think they can win.
Just a couple more questions for Rick Peterson of TopSports.News, joining us for our Invista Credit Union High School whip around here on 580 Sports Talk. One other boys game, Pistol, I've definitely got my eye on coming up on Friday, so coming up tomorrow night. This one will be in DeSoto, I believe. Yes, I'm checking it right now. It will be in DeSoto. Topeka West versus DeSoto, 5-1 versus 5-1. That would be a clash that could have some major implications at the top of the UKC standings at the end of the year. What do you make of that matchup for Rick Bloomquist's group?
Well, they're playing well. They will have to be playing well. I really like the Coben kid from DeSoto. I saw him against Seaman, and he took over the game in the fourth quarter. West will need big games out of Malachi Berg. They'll need big games out of Sincere Austin, Xavier Alexander. It's going to be, particularly on the road, it's going to be a tough battle for them. But I think the Chargers are playing very well.
Moving away from the hardwood for one question about a former area athlete, Pistol, one who I know you know and we know quite well, Kai Thomas, who obviously was a true superstar record setter at Topeka High, started his college career at Minnesota, transferred to KU this past season to obviously a lot of fanfare here locally. Never quite got off the ground. I know Kai was banged up for a lot of the season. It was awesome to see him really play well in the bowl game with a pair of touchdowns. He did enter the transfer portal, though, earlier this week, so he'll continue his college career elsewhere. Have you gotten to talk to Kai at all since he made that decision and got to know a little bit about what went into it?
I purposely have been leaving him alone. This didn't happen till Tuesday night. I know he's probably going through the interest that colleges are showing, things like that. Once he makes his decision, I have every intention of talking to him and doing the story. But, I try to kind of hold back a little bit, Brendan, because, these are still young kids that are making, career-altering decisions. So I never approve of being, real heavy-handed in that kind of situation.
No, I think that is extremely admirable. And wherever Kai ends up, I know he's going to find success. It's a bummer. As a KU grad, personally, I wish it would have worked out a little better at KU, but I know he's going to be successful no matter where he goes. Rick Peterson covers our prep sports in Topeka and Shawnee County better than anybody else. You can find his work at topsports.news. Find him on Twitter at Peterson_Rick. And he joins us every week for the Invista Credit Union High School Whip Around. Pistol, where are you headed to tomorrow night?
I think I'm with you tonight and tomorrow night. So,
hey, I'm never going to complain about that, Pistol.
Okay, that's good.
All right, well, then we will see you at Lee Arena tonight. We'll see you at Hayden tomorrow. Take care, Pistol. We'll see you then.
Okay, thank you.
That is Rick Peterson from topsports.news. Great insight, as always, from Pistol. Appreciate him jumping on with us for the Invista Credit Union High School Whip Around. And again, coming up tomorrow night, as soon as 580 Sports Talk is over, we will have coverage of the 580 Preps High School Basketball Game of the Week doubleheader, our first for calendar year 2023, and it should be a really fun one, a doubleheader of action between the Washburn Rural Junior Blues and the Hayden Wildcats. Yours truly and Larry Latimer will be on the call of that one. And again, start time scheduled for 6 o'clock. As soon as Sports Talk is done, we will send it to the Butel Center, and you can hear all the action right here on 580 WIBW and, of course, on FM 104.9 within the capital city as well. That does it for the 3 o'clock hour of 580 Sports Talk today. We'll take a break for the national and local news. Coming up in the 4 o'clock hour, though, Fulton is going to join us for a round of crosstalk. We'll get to today's What is Wrong with You, help see if we can get anyone to take down the 911 movers. And then we'll talk some college basketball as well, specifically Chris Beard being fired at Texas. What does that mean for Texas and the Big 12? Don't forget, you can hit us up on the Big O Tires text line or in the YouTube comments. We're back with the 4 o'clock hour of 580 Sports Talk after this. Hey now, 4 o'clock hour of 580 Sports Talk coming your way on this Thursday afternoon. Brendan Dworzynski, Dan Lucero here with you. Thank you so much for spending some of your afternoon hours with us. If you missed the first hour of the show, you can check out our website. That's 580WIBW.com. The podcast tab is right in the middle of the website. Just hover over that. Menu will pop up. Click on 580 Sports Talk, and that's where you'll find the hour-by-hour breakdown of the show for today. Coming up here in this 4 o'clock hour, we'll get to our What Is Wrong With You for today. The 911 Movers, they are our current weekly champion. We'll see if anyone can knock them down coming up here in just about 20 minutes or so. We've also got plenty of college basketball to get to. Chris Beard, he's out at Texas. And additionally, last night we had a great TCU versus Baylor game. The college basketball world right now is just wild. Baylor no longer looks like one of the best teams in the country. They're still good, but they're 0-2 in the Big 12, and that might have just knocked them out of the race in the Big 12. It sort of feels that way with how competitive it is, but by the same token, you could probably also argue no one is safe until the season is over because anyone can beat anyone at any given day. A lot of other storylines going on, so we'll get to plenty of college basketball news and notes coming up a little bit later on this hour. As always, the Big O Tires text line is open to you, 785-272-9429. That's our text line number. And you can also chime in the comment section on YouTube as well. We are live streaming the show on YouTube. Sports on 580 WIBW is our channel. Comment section is open. Let us know your thoughts on anything we are talking about during the show today. And with that, it's time for some crosstalk here on the program, and we welcome in our good friend Fulton Caster, who has been the solo host of Mic'd Up over the last week or so, usually the one of two co-hosts over on Mic'd Up noon to 3 every day here on 580 WIBW. How has flying solo been while Jake is out gallivanting across the Southern Hemisphere?
It's been different. It's been, I've realized a little bit extra work that I expected to happen, just kind of being the guy running the entire show, but it's been fun. It's been fun to just kind of, what I want to do is what we do this week. There's not a Jake and I kind of agree and go back and forth. It's just, I feel like doing this, so we're doing it this week.
Dangerous for your ego.
I would, it's very, this.
When I get a free hour on this show and Brendan has to go somewhere, I get drunk on the power.
The level of power I have been given the past few days, because I will, when this is all said and done, have done 6 consecutive shows, just me. It's going to feel weird going back to me and Jake and being like, wow, I just kind of don't get to dictatorship this thing around anymore.
You have to share your space again. Yeah.
It's like, I have to share the time on air again. Oh, boy. All right. Well, guess I'll do that again.
You could just not concede when he comes back.
I could. I could be just a lot more of pull the Captain Phillips and say, this is my show now.
Call squatters' rights on the, on the captain's chair.
Yeah. I've been here.
Yeah, you're going to the board now, Jake. I get to be in the studio.
But of course, Fulton, and when he gets back next week, Jake, noon to 3 every day, every weekday anyway, right here on 580 WIBW and on YouTube as well, Sports on 580 WIBW. The big news, this broke while you were on the air earlier today, Fulton. Chris Beard out at Texas. I assume you're in the same boat that we are. This was inevitable. There was just no clear way to bring him back into the fold, I think, after what happened at the start of the season. I mean, it just, between, obviously, and this is the most important part, no duh, the horrific allegations and charges against him, but also, how do you present that as the face of your program? What you want, if you're Texas, to be a competitive, top of the line, best in the best conference in the league kind of team, kind of program. I don't know how you would continue to trot that guy out, no matter how the actual off the court cases go and charges unfold. I just don't think there was ever a way you could bring this guy back.
And that's the difficulty of it. And that's what I kind of discussed on Mic'd Up earlier. Whether Chris Beard is convicted in the legal court system, we don't know how that's going to go. We don't know how that's going to play out. The allegations against him are incredibly serious. The court of public opinion is a different thing. And even if Chris Beard, this is found out and it goes a different way, we do not know what's going to happen. There's no conceivable way that Texas could continue with what they want to do with their basketball program, with the investments they put into it, especially with the new arena that they just built. You can't have somebody with that kind of, now, for lack of a better term, baggage. You can't have that kind of a person leading your program. This was just eventually going to happen. Texas was just, I think, just trying to get their ducks in a row to make sure they could legally fire him for cause and he not find a way to get, the rest of the money owed on his contract. Because he signed that big 7-year contract just last year. There's still 5 years left on that deal. And I'm not surprised Texas did this. I'm to a level happy they did it because I just don't think you can have that person leading your program. But it is, I don't know what's going to happen with Texas now on the court, let alone what's going to happen for them off the court.
I'll go one step further. I think Chris Beard's done as a major college head basketball coach.
I think it will take a lot for another program to take a chance on Chris Beard because we have dealt with coaches that have had off the field, off the court issues before. When they're of this nature and of this type of allegation, there's just a line that gets crossed that you don't come back from.
It's one thing to be, say, a Hugh Freeze and have a little problem with using your work phone to call escorts.
Yeah, it's a different thing.
That's the kind of thing you can say, I have been reformed, I have been forgiven for, and most people will buy that. If you, and I know this sounds flip when I say it, but there's a reason that Hugh Freeze's redemption tour included a stop at Liberty. Like, you needed the cloak of Jesus. You need to wrap yourself in enough Jesus to get people to believe that you truly are sorry and that you truly have been forgiven. And that will be that people will buy that line. And that's why Hugh Freeze is back in major college football. Being violent against your spouse or your partner, that's the kind of thing that's harder to rebound from. It's harder to convince people that you are sorry. It's harder to convince people that you will never do it again. It's really hard to overcome negative recruiting against it, which is a very big deal. You're going to have people go into houses and talk to mothers and say, are you sure you want that guy to be your coach? You want that guy to coach your son? There's a reason that we have not seen Greg Marshall resurface at the Division I level, because as a basketball coach, as a guy with a resume, Greg Marshall got fired 2 years ago at Wichita State. He's not back in the game yet, and that's just strictly based on his resume. That's surprising, but he was abusive towards his players. He was allegedly violent towards his players, and that's the kind of thing that is harder to overcome. I think in the coaching business, I don't think we're going to hear from Chris Beard again. I really don't. Maybe he can coach. Maybe he can coach a high school team. Maybe he latches on at an NAIA somewhere. But I think we've seen the last of him in major college basketball. And good. I don't feel sorry for him. Made his own bed.
Oh no, I don't feel one bit sorry for him. No doubt. I mean, again, to get to a point where that initial call to the police was made, and when those charges were filed and the details in the police report, it's sick and grotesque. And if you haven't looked it up already, definitely would recommend you go find the note or the excerpt of the note that the University of Texas sent to Chris Beard's lawyers, telling them about this situation where they had awareness that Chris Del Conte, their AD, was going to reach out and say, Chris, I'm going to give you a brief period of time where you can choose to resign. And if you do not, we are going to terminate your contract. And he said, I'm not going to resign. And UT said, essentially in response to that, it appears that he does not really understand what is happening here and does not understand the situation.
Yeah, the text from the letter, there seems to be an incorrect underlying assumption that the criminal process outcome dictates Mr. Beard's employment outcome. But these are different processes where different decision makers are weighing different factors. It continues, our evaluation of Mr. Beard's fitness for service is not contingent on whether he is also convicted of a particular crime or whether those charges are dismissed at some point. Additionally, your letter this morning, referring to the letter from the lawyer to the university, reveals that Mr. Beard does not understand the significance of the behavior he knows he engaged in or the ensuing events that impair his ability to effectively lead our program. This lack of self-awareness is yet another failure of judgment that makes Mr. Beard unfit to serve as a head coach at our university. I'm a big believer that people in power do what they want to do. Mm-hmm. Like, why is Hugh Freeze back coaching? Somebody wanted to hire him, so they did. Like, it's just that simple. They wanted to, so they did.
By the way, if you're watching on the YouTube stream, we put up the text from the email right now.
So I'm a big believer that that's true, but I also think that cuts both ways. Texas did not want this man to be their head coach. Regardless of what goes on with the legal proceedings from here, they did not want Chris Beard to be the face of their men's basketball program. They wanted to throw him out on his ass, so they did.
And good. That's how it should be. They handled that the right way. So obviously that part of it, I feel like we've had to say this a lot given the events of earlier this week, but the obvious, the life and the health and the safety of people off the court or off the field is most important. But when it comes to a basketball perspective, the next question is, how much does this impact Texas? Because I think they're still going to be really good, but I mean, Chris Beard's a good coach, maybe overrated according to some, but he's a good coach. He's a good recruiter. That's more of a future problem. How much does this impact Texas basketball-wise this year? I would imagine it's at least to some degree.
Yeah, that's my big thing with this with Texas on the court part of it. They've done, fairly well. They're 12-2 at this point, following their loss to Kansas State just earlier this week. So they're in a position where they can be talented and want to succeed. And they have a lot of good players, a lot of good talent on their team. But how much will this affect the players on the court? Because every player will ever tell you, like, oh, I tune out noise. I don't listen to what's going on. We're focused on our craft. We all know that's a load of crap. You can't tune out certain things. And there are things that they're always there in your mind. There is a level of effect I think this is going to have on these players on the court, because they're going to at certain times be asked about what's happening. And then it just comes down to what level of a coaching drop-off is about to occur for Texas at the tippity top of their system and their organization. And with how tough this Big 12 conference is, can they survive not having Beard in charge? It's a good question.
I think the future of that program is in dire straits because most of those guys, well, several of those guys anyway, they committed to go to Texas to play for Chris Beard.
Yeah, I really am intrigued if when this all, I don't think there'll be any transferings or sittings in season. There could be, we don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if this offseason there's a little bit of an exodus from Texas. Because
I'm certain there will be.
There are guys that signed up not because, and this is where we always go to whenever people get mad about players leaving because coaches leave. There are guys who did not sign up to play for a university. Suck it up as a fan for that. There are guys on that team that did not sign up to play for the glory of the burnt orange and playing in Austin and being a Longhorn.
Most of them did not, if not all of them.
Yeah, they signed up to play for basketball for Chris Beard because that is their way to be NBA players. He is not there. That changes the calculus. They will now leave. That is college sports in a nutshell. Guys sign up to play for coaches. They rarely, if ever, sign up to play for universities. That is the world we live in. So there's probably going to be an exodus from Texas, which they were on a rise. They were trying to situate themselves to be a contender in this conference.
They're ranked number 6 in the country as we see here today. That's going to drop after their loss to Kansas State, but still.
Yeah. They're numbered. They're in the top 10 of KenPom.
Yeah.
Like, they are supposed to be a high-level program. The drop-off from this could be immense once players start leaving. I don't know how much of a change we're going to see this year on the court, because I think most of these players will keep playing and play fairly well. But overall, I think starting next year, when I think an exodus does occur, Texas might be hitting the reset button after they did a good job kind of building themselves back up. They might be hitting that reset button way faster than they ever expected to.
Right now, power rank the top of the Big 12. Give me the first 5.
I probably would go Kansas, Texas.
Okay.
Well, man, after what I saw from TCU last night, I think I still lean Texas, but it's close. TCU, Baylor.
Wow. Interesting.
I still have Baylor up there. And then I'll be honest, I put Kansas State 5th.
I would put K-State 3rd, I think. I think I would go KU,
fair.
TCU, K-State. And then Texas. Maybe Baylor after that.
I think I go fair. Texas. I know Texas Tech's 0-2 too, but I like their mix.
I do too.
I do too. The entire conference, top to bottom, is incredibly strong.
I also know Iowa State's 2-0 in league play. I don't think that's going to stay the trend.
I think Iowa State is a team that fights very hard and plays close games. I just watch them play basketball, and I go, I don't know how they're winning games.
They're not the prettiest basketball.
It's so painful to watch them play basketball.
The Mace product, though, Caleb Grill had a performance the other day.
20 points last night in that victory.
Well, how
Good
they
for
won
him.
last night, Grant Sherfield couldn't make a shot.
Well,
Yeah.
that also
Yeah.
helps.
Yeah,
That
you
helps.
go 1 for 7 for the field for the third leading scorer, fourth leading scorer in the conference.
That
Grant
helps.
Sherfield, that was a big boost for Iowa State for sure.
Did you go to the same? Did you go to Mays? You went to Mays.
I went
school?
to Mays South.
Oh, Mays South.
Ah,
Okay, so
He's a
not the
Maverick,
same.
not an Eagle.
Ah.
Correct. Dan, even knowing the mascots down in that area. I'm proud.
I know most of the mascots.
Listen, you've done enough high school sports in a bunch of areas in this state. You probably know most.
There is literally no corner of the state I have not been to.
That's very fair.
One other college sports note, Fulp, before we let you go. Sounds like, based on social media, based on some things from the KU Beat Corps as well, sounds like Jason Bean actually is trending toward coming back next year for his final year of eligibility, when originally it looked like he was not going to return. Initial thoughts on that trend, and also, is he maybe switching positions, at least on a part-time basis? Like, he'll still be your QB2, but are we going to see more of him as a skill position player next year?
That's what I would think is going to happen, because
if he wants to play at the next level, I think that's what he's going to have to do.
that's I think bigger than just if he wanted to play the quarterback position, he knows he can't come back to KU. In the sense of, if he wants to be QB1, he knows KU's not the place to do it, because the way Jalen Daniels played and everything, he knows if he's playing at KU to be a quarterback, he's coming back to be a backup, which to a level, some guys are cool with that. He just goes, I just want to be a part of a team and a culture I enjoy, and I'll hang. But I think if Jason Bean is serious and has a good understanding of trying to play at the next level, he has to make a position change, because he has great athletic skills. His straight line speed is incredibly impressive. There's other parts of his running that I think could use some work to actually make him more efficient as an overall body of work runner. But he has the abilities that at either a running back or wide receiver position would make him attractive at the NFL level, because at the base of it, the NFL will always give speed a chance. We have found that out. If you just can run wickedly fast, an NFL team will give you a shot, because speed is a hot commodity at the next level. So I would like to think if Bean is coming back, he's going to, for about, a 75-25 split, be a skill position player with the understanding of, if we need him at quarterback, we can put him there.
It's an interesting thought. Could be on the Scott Frost career path. Get switched to safety upon his entry into the NFL.
Got a little Dalen Charlotte action happening, apparently.
Dalen Charlotte, wide receiver to corner, back to wide receiver. I hate David Beatty so much.
Bring it up.
What's coming up on tomorrow's Mic'd Up?
As always, we'll give you our Chiefs keys to the game for the Chiefs and Raiders coming up on Saturday. We'll go around the NFL, look a little bit at the playoff picture and what the seeding could look like, as a few seeds are still up for grabs and a few spots overall are up for grabs. And then our good man Seth Kaiser of the Athletic and Chief in the North newsletter, he'll join me tomorrow's show as well to do a little bit of the Chiefs and Raiders and a few other things with the Chiefs personnel that I want his opinions on.
We'll hear from you coming up tomorrow from noon to 3. Appreciate it, Fulton.
Always happy to be here, guys.
Let's take a time out. What is wrong with you is coming up next on 580 Sports Talk. It is time for our Thursday edition of What is Wrong with You on 580 Sports Talk. Brendan and Dan here with you. Our current winner for the week are the burglars who called the police, not to necessarily report their crime directly, but they wanted some help. They wanted to ride to the airport.
And while they were at it, if they could get a hand with moving some of this stolen property that they had.
That's not the police's job, unfortunately.
Going to be a hard one to beat.
My story for today is a pretty easy one. We are headed to, and I got to make sure I know where this is.
Iowa?
Iowa, yes. Johnson County, Iowa, where a 19-year-old motorist admitted to going 120 miles an hour on the interstate in his Honda because a good song came on the radio. After a witness called 911 to report a reckless driver was speeding and swerving all over the road, a sheriff's deputy spotted the suspect's vehicle as it flew past him at 100 miles an hour at 9:15 p.m. When the car was subsequently pulled over more than 2 miles up Interstate 380, driver Nicholas Bernard reportedly admitted to going 120 at one point. He explained that he reached that speed because, quote, a good song came on the stereo in his 2006 Honda Accord.
What the problem is, I don't blame him at all. I would have let him off without a warning.
What song was he listening to?
Bombs Over Baghdad by Outkast.
I was going to go with Highway Star by Deep Purple. That's
okay.
My foot's on the gas a little bit too hard song. That's my, oops, maybe I should slow down song.
Mine is Bombs Over Baghdad.
That is a great song. He was only going to face a speeding citation. That's when he opened up his glove box to grab his registration and insurance records when deputies spotted a large amount of marijuana in plain
view.
Man. Dude, at that point, just say, I don't have it on me. I can get it to you in 48 hours. At least in Kansas, they'll tell you, like, hey, if you don't have it on you, like, if you get it to us in a short amount of, at least I got pulled over one time for speeding, and this happened. They're like, hey, if you don't, I couldn't find it.
What song was on the radio?
The song that was on the radio was I had been at a Christmas party with my then girlfriend and it sucked and I knew I was going to break up with her after and I wanted to get home.
I remember this story.
Yeah. That was my first Christmas working here. Yeah, that was a fun Monday.
I remember this story.
And I couldn't find my insurance. He's like, look, if you get it to me within 24 hours or 48 hours, you get it to the county, it's fine. Dude, if you know you got all that much weed in your car, do anything in your power to make sure you are not revealing it. However, I would also like to point out, I've been on the interstates in Iowa before, not 380, but I've been on the interstates before. None of them have a top speed anywhere close to 120 miles an hour or even 100 miles an hour.
No.
If you're going that much over, like 25 at least over, that, at least in Kansas, that's not speeding. That's reckless driving. So I don't think it would have just been a speeding citation unless this was like the most polite kid ever.
Yeah. Or if the cop had been like, hey, man, this is Kickstart My Heart by Motley Crue. Like, I get it.
Sick. By the way, after a subsequent search of the car, they also found a pipe and other paraphernalia.
Yeah. Can't ride. If you're riding dirty, you got to be a little more careful.
Yep. Don't give them a reason to look around your car. What do you have today?
For my story, we go to Facebook and we meet Tennessee-based author Susan Meechan, who died by suicide 2 years ago. She was running a Facebook group called The Ward, a reading group. And in September of 2020, her daughter shared a post from her page announcing that she had died by suicide following bullying and harassment from members of the book community. Then on January 2nd, Susan Meechan came back to life and posted to the reading group. I debated on how to do this a million times and still not sure if it's right or not. My family did what they thought was best for me, and I can't fault them for it. Almost died again at my own hand, and they had to go through all that hell again. Returning to the ward doesn't mean much, but I'm in a good place now, and I'm hoping to write again. Let the fun begin. Fun is not what is on the minds of the many people in the Ward reading group, many of whom were blamed for the bullying harassment that had allegedly caused this woman to end her life. A fellow author named Samantha Cole said that after Meechan's alleged death, she beat herself up over not having reached out sooner, wondering if it might have made a difference.
Oh my God.
But she got a second chance to reach out to Meechan after she commented on the author's comeback post asking if the entire story had been made up. She was then invited to message Meechin privately, and Meechin wrote back, "Nothing's going on. I simply want my life back." So she faked her own death. Her daughter, posting as her, used that to gin up sales for her final novel, also started GoFundMe to pay for the funeral, and then continued to use the forum to blast members of the literary community for, again, allegedly having bullied her mother into suicide.
I hate this person. There are so many other ways you could have handled this other than faking your death. I hate this person with a passion. You're screwing up so many other people because you are selfish and don't know how to handle yourself as an adult.
Here's the other thing, though, which is kind of wild. Like, this woman has written like close to a dozen books and was well known enough in the literary community to have a well-subscribed Facebook page, Facebook group that she moderated, and for people to want to reach out and donate to her funeral. Did nobody go?
Yeah, right?
Like, I care enough about you to feel terrible that you were dead, to feel so badly that I will donate money to your funeral expenses, but not enough to act like if I donate to a funeral, I'm going to it.
Well, yeah.
Like, that's somebody I am close to, that it doesn't matter where they are. It doesn't matter what my circumstances are. I'm going to be there. But like, nobody went to this. Nobody checked. This woman was famous enough on Facebook, but not famous enough in real life. Hey, isn't that Susan? Just running around, living life.
I hate this woman so much. So much. I'm going to give her the win today, but I refuse to vote for her as our weekly champion because I hate her.
I am with you 100%.
Our reigning weekly champion, it remains the 911 Movers. They will advance on to tomorrow. We'll see if they can become our first weekly champions of 2023 coming up on tomorrow's show. Right now, though, we've got to take a break. Dan's got you the rest of the way. I am on my way to Lee Arena for some Washburn hoops tonight, taking on UCM. Pregame, I should say, at 5:15. Game 1 tips at 5:30 over on Classic Country 106.9. Talking some college basketball coming up next on 580 Sports Talk.
437 on 580 Sports Talk. And it's a solo mission the rest of the way. Dan Lucero taking you until 6 o'clock tonight. Washburn basketball tonight. Back at Lee Arena for the first time in 2023 are the Ichabod men and women as they host Central Missouri. And Brendan Dworzinski filling in for Jake LeBon on the call tonight. Pre-game coverage over on our sister station, Classic Country 106.9 at 5:15, leading up to the women's game at 5:30. The men's game to follow at approximately 7:30. We thank you for joining us, hanging out with us, whether you're watching on the YouTube stream, youtube.com/@sportson580. You're hearing us online, 580wibw.com. If you're listening on terrestrial radio, AM 580, FM 104.9. Text line is open. There's a lot of good stuff on the text line. I'm going to get to it here. The text line is open. The Big O Tires text line, 785-272-9429. First, I have to get to this. This shout out to Brendan. We were talking about one of our What Is Wrong With Yous, a gentleman who was driving 120 miles an hour on the interstate because a good song came on the radio. And Brendan's choice is Highway Star by Deep Purple. And somebody from the 785 has screen capped and sent to us the first or the top comment on that song on YouTube. And the top comment reads, "Don't listen to this while driving. I just got pulled over going 130 in a 90 zone. I forgot my car at home, though." So I guess, Brendan, not the only one to think Highway Star is one that gets you to mash on the gas. That was pretty funny. Thanks for sharing that with us. Texter from the 785. Again, we'll take your texts throughout the rest of the program. Coming up in the 5 o'clock hour, we still got our Blue Dot of Kansas headlines. We're going to talk to Mitch Holthus in about an hour from now. Voice of the Chiefs will join us. We'll relive Sunday's win over the Denver Broncos and look ahead to the regular season finale on Saturday against the Raiders. Quick programming note for that one. Because of K-State men's and women's basketball all day here on 580 WIBW, the Chiefs broadcast on Saturday afternoon will be moved to our sister station, the Big 94.5 Country, 94.5 FM. So if you are looking to hear the Chiefs on Saturday, you will need to flip over to our sister station, the Big 94.5 Country, as we will be carrying K-State women's and men's basketball here on 580 WIBW. That's all coming up in the 5 o'clock hour. Want to get back to Big 12 hoops. We talked a bit about it in Crosstalk. Fulton Castro joined us at the top of the hour. We were talking about the big Big 12 basketball news of the day. Chris Beard fired at Florida. The statement from Chris Del Conte, the athletics director and vice president of the university. The University of Texas has parted ways with Chris Beard. This has been a difficult situation that we've been diligently working through. Today, I informed Mr. Beard of our decision to terminate him effective immediately. We thank Coach Rodney Terry for his exemplary leadership, both on and off the court, at a time when our team needed it most. We are grateful he will remain the acting head coach for the remainder of the season. We are proud of our student athletes, coaches, and staff who throughout this difficult time have continued to make us proud to be Longhorns. End of statement. So I think Chris Beard's done as a major college basketball head coach. I think that's it for him. I think there are things that you can't come back from as a coach, and physical abuse of a spouse or partner is one of them. And so I think this is going to be extraordinarily difficult, even for a coach with Beard's resume, which, again, pretty good resume. Chris Beard's been a winner wherever he's gone. Took Little Rock to the NCAA tournament in his lone season there. 5 seasons at Texas Tech. Would have been 4 NCAA tournaments. They probably would have gone in 2020 had it not been canceled. And, of course, took Texas to the tournament last year in his first year in Austin. But college basketball is full of redemption stories. And one texter did point that out from the 785. Rick Pitino got a second chance at Iona. John Calipari got the Kentucky gig after he screwed over UMass and Memphis with sanctions. Billy Gillespie is back at Tarleton State after alcoholism and other things at Kentucky. So our texter predicts that in 10 years, Beard will be back coaching somewhere, even if it's as an assistant. So I don't think what Chris Beard did is analogous to what Pitino and Calipari in particular were guilty of, which, I mean, look, there's sordid details that we don't need to really get into of the whole Rick Pitino story at Louisville, but there was an element of adulterous behavior there, certainly, but it didn't rise to the level of felonious criminal behavior. It's a very ugly story, and if you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. If you don't know, I'm sure it's in Wikipedia somewhere. Like, we ain't got the time, and I don't know how to tell it for the radio. As far as the sanctions, though, like, obviously Louisville was left in a really bad spot with the rules that were broken under Rick Pitino while he was at Louisville. And they're still trying to dig out from underneath that, and then the failure that was Chris Mack. And right now, they're as bad a program as there is in major Division I college basketball. I think they're 2-13 on the season. Just unfathomable fall for Louisville. John Calipari left UMass in some shambles, and they've never been the same program, and left Memphis in some shambles, and they've never quite been the same program that they were under John Calipari because of the rules that were broken and the sanctions that were placed. The difference, though, is that Pitino's a bona fide legend as far as all the winning that he's done. And Calipari has won at places where traditionally you don't win at that level. Like Memphis State went to a Final Four in the 70s. Like they were, I think they were the team that lost in the title game the year Bill Walton didn't miss a shot. They lost to UCLA in a national title game. I don't remember if it was exactly the one where Bill Walton was perfect, but I think it was. And I'm not going to bore you with me clicking around Wikipedia to find out if I'm right or not. You can fact check me if you'd like. But Memphis hadn't been quite near that pinnacle other than when Penny Hardaway was a player there. And UMass had not been the kind of program that goes to Final Fours traditionally until they went to the Final Four under Calipari. So he had the reputation of being a winner. And so a program that Kentucky in particular looked at Calipari and said, look, we've been down before. We've dug ourselves out of trouble as a program before. Ironically enough, by Rick Pitino, right? By Rick Pitino. So they felt like they could overlook NCAA infractions. Those were the kinds of things that they thought they could look past. Those were the kinds of things that a coach could credibly get on a dais, on a podium, behind a microphone, and say, I've learned my lesson. I'm never going to make these mistakes again. I promise I will be good. And you can sell that to your fan base. They sold that to the fan base of Kentucky. Iona sold that to their fans when they hired Rick Pitino. And you know what? Iona's got a pretty good basketball team right now. It's a trade they're willing to make. But it's a lot harder for a guy who's been charged. And the charges may yet be dropped. We don't know what's going to unfold from a legal perspective. But for a guy charged with felony domestic abuse, to be able to say, yeah, that'll never happen again, that gets harder to do. It's a lot harder for Chris Beard to sell that to an athletic director, for an athletic director to sell that to a fan base, for a coach to sell to prospective recruits, to the parents of prospective recruits. That's a whole different deal than just you broke a couple of rules from a governing body that people aren't all that super fond of anyway in the NCAA, right? So different deal. And that's why I think this is going to be more like, and look, I could be wrong. I'll hand up. I'll be the first one to say if in 8 years, Chris Beard is the head coach of, I don't know, Lehigh, just to pick one of the 360 odd Division I basketball programs out of thin air. Let's say he's a coach at Lehigh or Stetson or Cal State Fullerton. I don't know. If that happens in 2, 5, 10 years, I'll be the first one to say, hey, I got that one wrong. But I think this is going to be a lot harder, and I think in the end, impossible. Yeah, maybe he's an assistant. Maybe he can. It's more palatable for an NAIA school or a Division III school or a JUCO to be able to say, hey, yeah, we're going to hire this guy. We're going to be the ones to try and rehabilitate him. But I don't think that rehab job, so to speak, that PR rehab job is going to happen under the bright lights of Power 5 men's college basketball or even Division 1 men's college basketball. But again, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. And for the 785, basketball is very forgiving to coaches. Larry Eustace's another guy who, after losing his job at Iowa State, ended up at Southern Miss and then Colorado State and had some success. But again, I think you're drawing a parallel that I don't necessarily think is a parallel from alcoholism. And Billy Gillispie he had issues with alcohol as well when he was coaching at Kentucky, when he was coaching at Texas A&M. That's a different deal than you've been charged with felony spousal abuse. And whether or not those charges get dropped, it's on the record that there was a physical altercation, and those injuries on his domestic partner, they came from somebody. They came from somewhere. They came from something. You can't just explain that away. With alcoholism, that's a little easier to be able to say from a PR standpoint, hey, I'm doing the work. I went to rehab. Billy Gillispie went to rehab. Eustace, I believe, had a stint in rehab as well. I've done the work. I've cleaned that part of my life up. I'm sober. I'm ready to dedicate my life fully to coaching. You can sell that. You can sell that redemption story. I don't think you can sell redemption from what Chris Beard has done. And the other part of it is this, too. Whether or not those charges are dropped, whether or not there is a prison sentence ahead for Chris Beard or not, Chris Beard got fired for other reasons, as a letter makes very clear. The letter from the University of Texas to Beard's lawyer makes very clear that there is behavior that got Chris Beard fired. I'm going to find the text of the letter again. Our evaluation of Mr. Beard's fitness for service is not contingent on whether he is also convicted of a particular crime or whether those charges are dismissed at some point. Additionally, Mr. Beard does not understand the significance of his behavior he knows he engaged in or the ensuing events that impair his ability to effectively lead our program. This lack of self-awareness is yet another failure of judgment that makes Mr. Beard unfit to serve as a head coach at our university. So it's not just he got charged with this felony. If the charges are dropped, it sounded like a couple of weeks ago when the alleged victim in question kind of recanted her or some of her allegations. It sounded like that might be where this was headed, that maybe those charges do get dropped. It happens all the time in domestic abuse situations, which is unfortunate, but it does happen quite often. But that's not why Texas is walking away from Chris Beard today. Because if they could have found a way to keep him, I think they would have. They paid him a lot of money, and he is a good coach, a winning coach. And he was doing exactly what they brought him to Texas to do: win, get that program in the top 10. They had a marquee win already this year, as good a win as anybody in the country's got this year over Gonzaga. They brought him to do what he was doing. But it's the pattern of behavior that made it not tenable for Beard to continue to be the head coach there. We have a suggestion from Mark on the YouTube comments. Maybe Chris Beard could end up in the NBA. Again, is there an NBA team that's going to want to do image rehab for a guy who's been charged with a domestic abuse felony? Like, that's what you have to do, because it's not just as simple as, oh, you put him on your sideline. You have to convince your ownership. You have to convince your front office. You have to convince your players. You have to convince your fans that this guy belongs on the sideline. And that is, there are some things, there are some sins, there are some crimes that you can sell a rehabilitation story, a redemption narrative. And Chris Beard is not one of those. Because I think if it was, Texas may have slow played this a little more and may have found a way to get him back on the sideline so that they don't get dragged into a legal battle with Chris Beard's lawyer, who, for the record, also made a statement earlier today. Chris Beard has crushed the news. He will not be coaching at the University of Texas. It actually says couching at the University of Texas, which is kind of a funny typo, because Chris Beard was one of those sleep on my couch at the office type of guys. At the outset of Coach Beard's suspension, the university promised they would conduct an independent investigation surrounding the allegations and make a decision regarding his employment only after they had done so. They proceeded to terminate Coach Beard without asking a single question of him or his fiancée. Since the arrest, there have been only positive developments, clearly demonstrating his innocence. Additionally, as my opinion shared by others, any potential charges will be declined very soon. I'm concerned the University of Texas made a terrible decision against the interests of the university. The university has violated their agreement with the coach, and we are devastated. That is a paraphrasing of the entire statement from Beard's lawyer. Look, there are a lot of things. Again, I understand that college athletics, there are a lot of people that get second chances, and a lot of people that don't deserve second chances who get second chances and third chances. But there are some things that you don't really bounce back from. Art Briles, there's a reason he's not back in Division I football. Greg Marshall, there's a reason it's been 2 years since he got axed at Wichita State and nobody's brought him aboard. There's a reason Dave Bliss never coached Division I men's basketball again. And I think that we're trending very clearly towards Chris Beard not coaching major college basketball again. I think that's where this is headed. And now this is over with. This is done. And it's done regardless of where the legal system goes from here. Texas decided to fire for cause. There will be lawsuits and such, I'm sure, or a legal process that unfolds about Beard's money. But I believe it's in the university bylaws that if an employee is charged with, just charged, not convicted, charged, as Beard has been, with a felony, that they can terminate that employee with cause or for cause. So Texas has moved in that direction. Now we get back to the business at hand, which is talking about a basketball league that has been absolutely awesome. We had 2 more bangers last night. TCU and Baylor, we talked about a little bit. Oklahoma and Iowa State, also a really good game. 6 of the 10 Big 12 games this year. You want to talk about parity. You want to talk about down to the wire, evenly matched teams. 6 of the 10 games so far in the Big 12 have been either one-possession games or gone to overtime. The K-State West Virginia game ended up being a 6-point K-State win, I think, but win overtime. So it's tied at the end of 40 minutes. And 5 others have been one-possession games at the end of 40 minutes. That's awesome. That's fun. And it's going to be a really fun league. And now a shadow that was over the University of Texas's program has been removed. And they can move on with their season with the surety of who's going to be their head coach. It's going to be Rodney Terry. That's going to do it for the 4 o'clock hour. When we come back, we got our Blue Dot of Kansas headlines. We've got Mitch Holtz is going to join us in about half an hour or so. Always look forward to our conversations with Mitch. Plus your texts, your YouTube comments, all that good stuff coming up 5 o'clock hour, 5A Sports Talk. Let's get it. Final hour of the day here on 580 Sports Talk. So glad you're along for the ride. Dan Lucero with you. Flying solo for this final hour. If you are missing the dulcet tones of Brendan Dworzinski, you can flip over to our sister station, Classic Country 106.9. Brendan's got the call of Washburn basketball tonight. Pre-game coverage starting in about 10 minutes as Washburn's women and men host Central Missouri. Tip-off for the women at Lee Arena at 5:30 with the men's game to follow, which leaves you and me and a whole lot of fun here in this 5 o'clock hour here to wrap up this Thursday edition of the show. If you missed any of the first 2 hours, our audio archive runs deep at 580wibw.com. You got the podcast drop-down menu, find 580 Sports Talk. You can hear hour-by-hour breakdowns of the show, and guys, it goes way back. There are like 100 pages on there. It goes way back. You can find old shows, listen to old takes, hear how right we were or how wrong we may have been. We've been wrong a time or two, I suppose, on these airways. But the podcast archive always available, and we get that right up like lightning. As soon as an hour is complete, the archive is uploaded to 580wibw.com. Our video archive also available on our YouTube page. It's youtube.com/@sportson580. You can subscribe. It costs you nothing to do so, and it makes Brendan and I feel really good inside when you do. So make sure you click that subscribe button. You can watch us live every day. You can watch the archive of our shows. You can watch Mic'd Up live and archive. All of our video content that we do on Twitter, that we live stream as well, all available on our YouTube page. You can interact with the show live on the YouTube chat function. The gang's all here. It's cool to see. We've done this now a couple of months. I think we're into the third month of doing the video stream. So it's cool to see, familiar faces come in. It's like a sports bar. You see familiar names, familiar avatars, so to speak. It's good to see you all here. Vance, Mark, Barbara, Matt. We appreciate you guys chiming in on the YouTube chat. We appreciate you hanging out with us on the regular on the YouTube stream. Of course, the Big O Tires text line is always open. 785-272-9429 is the Big O Tires text line. Hit us up, and we'll be happy to read some of those. Coming up in about 25 minutes, Mitch Holthus, the voice of the Kansas City Chiefs, will join us for our weekly conversation. We'll recap Kansas City's win over Denver on Sunday and look ahead to the finale on Saturday. The Chiefs wrap up the regular season, number 1 seed on the line for the Chiefs as they take on the Las Vegas Raiders. Mitch Holthus joins us in about 25 minutes or so. But we start the 5 o'clock hour, as always, with our Blue Dot of Kansas headlines, brought to you by our good friends at Blue Dot of Kansas. Want to make sure your furnace is in working order. If it ever goes out during the winter, you're in a world of trouble. Believe me, that's not where you want to be. So Blue Dot of Kansas are the people that you need to get a hold of if you are having furnace issues or any other plumbing, AC, HVAC issues. Go to their website and see what they can do for you at bluedotkansas.com. We began with the wonderful news from University of Cincinnati Medical Center earlier today. It has been reported on CBS News as this has gone from being just a sports story to being much, much more than that, a human interest story. And there is good news and positive development all around for Buffalo Bills safety Damar Hamlin as he begins to awaken, showing substantial improvement in his recovery from his on-field collapse Monday night during the Bills game against the Cincinnati Bengals. While Hamlin is still considered critically ill and has significant progress needed ahead of him, it sounds as though his neurological condition appears to be intact. One of the doctors, Timothy Pritz, put it this way, that the fact that Hamlin, when he came to after being sedated for the last couple of days, asked about whether or not the Bills had won their game on Monday night, that was a sign, according to Pritt, that, quote, not only the lights are on, but he's home. And that is wonderful news. The scary deal when you lose a pulse, right? When your heart stops working and they have to make it work again, is that the heart, obviously pretty important to the rest of the function of your body. Boy, I'm really stating the obvious here, aren't I? But you worry about oxygen to the brain, right? You worry about blood flow and you worry about oxygen to the brain. The brain without oxygen for too long, that can create a whole set of problems. And we don't know exactly all of the details. We don't know how long that Damar Hamlin's brain may have been deprived of oxygen. But the fact that he appears to be neurologically intact is an absolutely wonderful sign. Hamlin is able to move his hands and feet, according to the doctors, unable to speak as he is still intubated, but was able to communicate in writing. And that is how he asked whether or not the Bills won the game. There's no definitive answer to this point as to what has caused Hamlin's cardiac arrest. A lot of theories, credible theories. A likely answer is that it was a case of commotio cordis. We talked about this on Tuesday's show, when the heart is contacted in just the right place within a 10 to 30 millisecond window of the heart's electrical cycle, an infinitesimally small period of time and an absolute fluke freak thing to happen if indeed that is what happened. A lot of cardiologists out there seem to think that that is a likely or a possible, I won't go as far as likely, but a possible reason for what Hamlin went through on Monday night. More from Dr. Pritz. He said neurological signs of improvement began Wednesday night as Hamlin began to gradually wake up as the rest of his body has healed. The doctor said it's too early to tell how Hamlin is doing emotionally, in part because he's still on a ventilator. Doctors have also not fully assessed his speech and other functions, in part because he is under sedation to accommodate the breathing tube. A quote from Dr. William Knight IV, also part of a press conference earlier today at UC Medical Center. When we talk about neurologically intact, it's a very gross term of big motor movements and following commands. When we talk about the finer things that make us human, cognition, emotion, speech, language, etc., we're looking forward to learning more about that soon. Hamlin remains in critical condition. To be upgraded, he will need to be taken off a breathing tube and show improved neurological and breathing functions. And at that point, they would like to get Hamlin home to Buffalo or perhaps to, if he still resides in the Pittsburgh area, and see about potential steps for the future. It's also too early at this stage to say whether Hamlin could return to football after undergoing rehabilitation. There will be a time for those questions to be answered. But the fact that Damar Hamlin is awake, that he is squeezing the hands of his loved ones, that they get to be in the room with him and touch him, and that he can communicate with them by writing is just the most wonderful news. And something that I think if you're a football fan, I think if you're a sports fan, I think if you're a human being who has been following this story at all, today felt like a really good day because we got this news. Now, I had talked about it on Tuesday. The worst part of experiencing that, watching that, having that happen on Monday night was the nature of what had happened to Damar Hamlin was such that there was going to be no thumbs up on the way off the field, right? There was to be none of what we usually get as confirmation that the player we just saw gravely injured was going to be okay. And I think now that it is starting to feel like Damar Hamlin is going to be okay, whether that includes football or not, again, is for another day, but that his family can communicate with him and that he can hold their hands, like that made my day today. That made me feel really good. And I hope that perhaps you felt the exact same way today. As Vance puts it in the YouTube comments, prayers answered, incredible news. And it really is. And so we hope continually for the best for Hamlin. His Bills teammates returned to practice today. Something else that made me feel really good was seeing pictures today from Bills practice and to see Josh Allen smiling, to see Tre'Davious White, another one of Hamlin's teammates who was visibly anguished and in tears on the field, one of many Bills who were brought to tears on the field Monday night, to see him smiling, to hear Josh Allen when asked, hey, you guys ready to play a football game on Sunday? To hear him say, yeah, we are, unequivocally. We are ready to go. That made me feel good. It's good to see those guys smiling. It's good to see those guys happy. It's good to see those guys who went through something so traumatic on Monday night uplifted by the good news that we got today about Damar Hamlin. So You hope for the best for those guys too, because what they've been through is quite a lot. Obviously, it's a different scenario. None of them. It's only one of their teammates who's fighting for his life still in the hospital. But for everybody who experienced that trauma Monday night, to have a good day, to have a smile, to feel like you're ready to resume your life's work, that's a really good feeling. And the best news by far that we're going to bring you here on the Blue Dot of Kansas headlines on this Thursday. The NFL has not decided to this point what is going to happen to the Bills-Bengals game. We only know still what we knew yesterday, that the game will not resume this week. There have been a lot of proposed solutions that have floated around. How realistic those are, I could not tell you. There's been nothing concrete or firm to this point that has been reported about that. It does feel like the most likely outcome is that the game does not get replayed. So the Bills and Bengals would finish having played 16 games while every other team plays 17. What then is done about the standings? Again, that is a decision that has not been made yet, and we won't speculate exactly on what that's going to be. But I would imagine with only 2 days between now and the start of the final week of the regular season, a decision needs to be made pretty quickly. And I would not be surprised if there was one before we hit air tomorrow. In fact, I would almost think it would be a necessity for the NFL to have made a decision by tomorrow afternoon as to what is going to happen with regards to the AFC playoff race that is impacted by whether or not that game is resumed. Let's move on our Blue Dot of Kansas headlines. Let's talk about Week 18 and the Chiefs and the Raiders in Vegas. The injury report is out for the Kansas City Chiefs. We alluded to it a little bit earlier in the program. Sky Moore has been ruled out for Saturday's game, the rookie wide receiver dealing with a hand laceration. He was limited in practice yesterday, was back to a did not practice designation today. So Sky Moore will not play on Saturday. 4 Chiefs are listed as questionable, including Mecole Hardman, who returned to the participation report after he was activated from injured reserve on Wednesday. He has been limited both days with what is being called a pelvis injury, and he is questionable. So too, kicker Harrison Butker, who returned to practice on a limited basis today after not practicing Wednesday due to back spasms. Joe Thuney, limited all week with an ankle injury, is questionable. And L'Jarius Sneed, limited Wednesday and Thursday after not practicing Tuesday. Also questionable with that hip pointer that he suffered when he got blindsided by Cortland Sutton on his interception return in the second half on Sunday. I do not see the Raiders injury report yet. They're obviously on West Coast time, so it may take a little bit to get theirs up. But they only had 2 players that were either limited or DNP yesterday, and one of those was a non-injury related absence. Josh Jacobs didn't practice for personal reasons. So of the guys that are active on their 53-man roster, the Raiders are looking to be pretty healthy heading into Saturday. Our next headline, we'll keep it sort of NFL related, as Michigan head coach Jim Harbaugh released a statement via the Michigan football Twitter account earlier this afternoon. Harbaugh, of course, former NFL head coach, was hotly rumored last year that he would consider returning to the National Football League, but nothing came of that. This year, he's been the subject of more rumors with the Colts, Panthers, and Broncos vacancies already out there. But in the statement today, Harbaugh said, "I am aware of the rumors and speculation over the past few days. College and NFL teams have great interest in all our personnel, from players to coaches to staff, and I truly believe that is a testament to the strength of our University of Michigan football program. As I stated in December, while no one knows what the future holds, I expect that I will be enthusiastically coaching Michigan in 2013. Our mission as Wolverines continues. We are preparing for the 2023 season." I said 2013, didn't I? Wait, that's way wrong. "I will be enthusiastically coaching Michigan in 2023. Our mission as Wolverines continues, and we are preparing for the 2023 season with great passion and enthusiasm." So he expects to be coaching at Michigan. Now, some gamesmanship is possible here. Perhaps this is an early sign that whatever's being floated as a possible offer by Carolina or Denver or Indianapolis isn't enticing enough, either financially or in terms of power, you have to believe if Harbaugh's coming back to the NFL, he wants to have some player personnel say, right? If not be the GM outright, at least have a big say in how his roster is put together. Maybe that's not being offered yet. So maybe this is a warning shot. Maybe this is, hey, I'm not enticed yet. Make me a better offer. Or maybe this is just a very weird man, and Jim Harbaugh is many things, and weird is one of them. Maybe this is just a very weird man saying, I'm not going anywhere. I am going to coach at Michigan. It's not a normal way to say it, but Jim Harbaugh doesn't do a lot of normal things. But anyway, that is the latest from Jim Harbaugh. As a texter from the 785 puts it on the Big O Tires text line, he left the door wide open, didn't he? Yeah, he did. He did. Maybe not intentionally, but certainly the wording of that would seem to suggest that while he expects to be coaching Michigan, no one knows what the future holds. Like, okay, Carl Sagan, chill out. If I had to guess, and this is just me talking with no background, I don't have a source connected to the University of Michigan. I think that unless Harbaugh gets full player personnel control over whatever team wants to hire him, I think he will stay in college. But I also think that this is a much more realistic time for him to go back to the NFL than last year. I think that Harbaugh certainly has a desire to leave Michigan in a better place than he found it. And Michigan has been to the playoff back-to-back years, won the Big Ten back-to-back years, beaten Ohio State back-to-back years, and they're loaded for next year. Like, the quarterback is back. They got a bunch of linemen. They have a bunch of defensive starters coming back. Like, they're going to be really, really good again next year. And that would be a good place for a new head coach, especially if that's somebody that Harbaugh maybe has already had in mind on his current coaching staff to take over. So that is my theory. But again, I don't have any inside information for you one way or another. Couple of more quick headlines to get to. The Pro Football Hall of Fame finalists for the class of 2023 were announced last night, including one former Chief who's waited a long time to get his name on this list. Yes, I'm talking about Darrelle Revis. Okay, I'm not talking about Darrelle Revis. He is a former Chief. No, a different former Chief cornerback, Albert Lewis, who played his last game in 1998. There's the 5-year waiting period after retirement. 20 years later, Albert Lewis, an all-time great Chief defensive back, is a finalist for the Pro Football Hall of Fame for the first time. 3 others are first-time eligible players who are finalists. They are tackle Joe Thomas, defensive end Dwight Freeney, and the aforementioned Darrelle Revis. The rest of the finalists for the class of 2023 are Jared Allen, Willie Anderson, Rondé Barber, Devin Hester, Torrey Holt, Andre Johnson, Zach Thomas, DeMarcus Ware, Reggie Wayne, Patrick Willis, and Darren Woodson. Like, I hear a lot of Hall of Famers on that list. They can only put in 5. So somebody really, really good, really, really deserving is going to have to wait another year, probably more than one somebody. If I could only pick 5 from that list for me, if you said, Dan, who are your 5? These would be my 5. Joe Thomas would be one of my 5. Darrelle Revis would be one of my 5. And then it gets a little tougher after that. Those 2 to me, no-brainers. Beyond that, probably, I think I'd go with Patrick Willis, even though he had a short career. It was an awesome career. I'd go Patrick Willis. I'd go Dwight Freeney over DeMarcus Ware. I thought Freeney was a better player than Ware. Real coin flip. Maybe that's me being a hater on the former Bronco Ware, but yeah, I'd go Freeney over Ware. And then I'd go with but give me one of the wide receivers. Give me Reggie Wayne. Reggie Wayne. Wayne over Holt and Johnson for me at the wide receivers. Those would be the 5 I'd pick. One last headline, real quick one on Blue Dot of Kansas headlines. We had a texter from the 913 allude to this. What's the bigger failure, Chris Beard's coaching career or Ryan O'Hearn's Orioles career? Less than 2 days after being traded from Kansas City to Baltimore, the Orioles designated Ryan O'Hearn for assignment today so that they could claim Lewin Diaz, former Marlins first baseman, off of waivers. Ryan O'Hearn was an Oriole for about 48 hours. I am firm in the belief that there are fans and teammates alike that will be thrilled by some big dingers hit by Ryan O'Hearn sometime in the future. And I think that those fans and teammates are both going to be Korean or Japanese, but Far Eastern. Let's say that. I think the future for Ryan O'Hearn is on the other side of the Pacific. Let's say that. That's going to do it again for our Blue Dot of Kansas headlines. Visit them online, blue.kansas.com. Mitch Holthus in about 10 minutes. First, we'll come back with a little more 5A sports talk after this.
Variety is the spice of life, and the menu at the T-Box is constantly.
.529 here on 580 Sports Talk. Coming up in just a little bit, we'll be pleased to be joined by Mitch Holthus, voice of the Kansas State Chiefs. Get his thoughts on the Chiefs' win over Denver and a great preview with, I'm sure, some nuggets of the night for the regular season finale, the Chiefs and the Raiders. Bit of news broke via Instagram while we were doing our Blue Dot of Kansas headlines. Another K-Stater is heading to the NFL draft. Malik Knowles on his Instagram has confirmed that he has been invited to the 2023 NFL Combine and will be entering the draft. Part of his statement reads, "Thank you, Wildcat Nation, for the memorable moments, coaches, teammates, and most importantly, the fans who keep me on my feet. I've dreamed of this moment of playing Little League, and my dreams are finally becoming a reality." So Knowles joins Julius Brent, who declared for the draft on his Instagram and social media last night. And, of course, he's on as Wildcats who are heading to the NFL. I think Malik Knowles has a chance to catch on in the NFL. Like, receivers and running backs, unless you're the elite of the elite, it kind of all breaks down as to, what situation do you end up in? Do you find a coach or a coordinator or a quarterback or a situation that is just the right fit for you? And that can be the difference between bouncing around from practice squad to practice squad or being a guy who sticks in the league for 8 days. And I think that Knowles probably fits into that category. Obviously, we've seen he's explosive on jet sweep, so he's not just a guy that can be used strictly in a pass catching role. He's somebody who can make the gadget play pop, and obviously, it's a terrific return man. Even though there were times I wish he would maybe just take the knee or fair catch here and there, might have done him good now and again. But when he did hit a home run in the return game, usually it was a big one. So I think there is an NFL future for Malik Knowles. I think he can catch on, and I think he can get some playing time as a rookie. I hesitate. I'm not, draft Nick guy. I'm not in draft mode, so I couldn't sit here right now and tell you with any kind of reliability. I think he's going to be a fifth round pick, or I think he's going to be a seventh round pick, or any list undrafted. I don't know. But third day of the draft, round 4 through 7, and an opportunity to maybe return kicks or punts or be a special teams guy right away. I feel like that's very possible for me, Coach Nolan, with a chance to be more because he's a big target too. That's the other thing about him. He's a big kid and big target with some speed. I think there's an NFL future for Malik Knowles, and excited to see where it goes. He's certainly one of the more electrifying members of the K-State offense in recent memory. Julius Prince declared it last night. I meant to get to that. I guess we do it now when we have Julius Prince is another guy who I think is going to latch on to an NFL roster fairly routinely because good sized quarterback, somebody who plays physically on the outside, and somebody who has an opportunity, I think, to be a player. Somebody like, recent years, I think they produced some smaller cornerbacks that have made the league and such. Kelly had a nice year for Minnesota. DJ Reed has, after bouncing around a bit, now the home Jets had a really nice year for them. I think they got the top 5 years. I think Julius Prince can follow in those footsteps. Question number 620. Single tire stick line, 25 to 7%. Felix and UDK Thomas players this year. I think you can have somebody tell him to go in the first 2-3 rounds, and if you're going to go in the first 2-3 rounds, you should probably go pro. You should probably go and make that NFL money while you can. Now, there's a chance that your advice along the lines of, yeah, you can be a second rounder, but back, maybe you can first round. And if you're out along with some NIL money, it might be a nice to get up to 2 rounds later. But if I had to guess, we have a spot right now, I think you would get very soon. We got to take a break. It's 4 seconds here. 5-8. 5:38 here on 580 Sports Talk. Dan Lucero with you. We are out to Mitch Holthus, the voice of the Chiefs. He will join us shortly, I am sure. Look forward, as we always do, to speaking with Mitch on the Thursday edition of 580 Sports Talk, getting his thoughts on not just what occurred on Sunday with the Chiefs and their home victory over the Denver Broncos, and not just what to look for as the Chiefs take on the Raiders on Saturday in the first game of Week 18, but also very curious as to his perspective and the Chiefs' perspective on what has been a difficult week in the NFL, with everybody's thoughts on the health and well-being and hoping for the best for Damar Hamlin of the Buffalo Bills, and how that may have affected or how that may have altered the atmosphere or the mindset of players around the league. Because, you know, they say it all the time, we hear it all the time, that the NFL, the players, it's a brotherhood, right? It's a brotherhood. And so it's not just somebody from another team that is going through what Damar Hamlin is going through this week. It's a brother. It's somebody that you know what it's like to be in their shoes. Only guys who are in it or who have been in it know truly what it's like, the sacrifices and the effort and all of that it takes to be an NFL player. Well, the difficult thing that I'm sure not just the Chiefs, but all teams in the NFL are going through this week is, you got to imagine a lot of them were watching on Monday night, and maybe some of them were college teammates or have played against the Bills or have encountered Damar Hamlin in some way. And even those who haven't, you have that empathy of seeing somebody go through such a traumatic event and what that means. And it's a hard thing. It's a hard thing to process. It's difficult for the Bills to process, difficult for the Bengals to process, but I think it's probably difficult for all 30 other teams to process this week and get out and get back to business after experiencing that event. And hopefully, you know, spirits lifted. I think, again, certainly spirits lifted in this broadcast booth, but spirits lifted everywhere with good news about Damar Hamlin today. We're going to take a break, and we will come back, and hopefully we'll be joined by Mitch Holthus on the other side of this break. You're listening to 580 Sports Talk. Welcome back, 580 Sports Talk. Dan Lucero with you. Brendan Dworzinski at Lee Arena tonight for Washburn basketball. They are underway in the women's game at Lee Arena between Washburn and Central Missouri. You can catch the action tonight, women's and men's, to follow on our sister station, Classic Country 106.9. Last we saw, it was a slow start for the Washburn women against the second-ranked team in the country as UCM had jumped out to a 9-0 lead, but a lot of game left. And hey, if you listen to K-State women's basketball last night, they were down 9-0 early and they came back and won. So lots of basketball left at Lee Arena tonight. That's where Brendan Dworzinski is as we speak. We are still hoping to connect with Mitch Holthus before the end of the hour. Mitch joins us every Thursday here on the program, courtesy of Hy-Vee and Azura Credit Union. We are hopeful to hear from Mitch here before too long, as we've got just a handful of minutes left in the program today. A couple of recent developments, though, we could talk about. We talk a little K-State hoops. Joe Lunardi's latest bracketology came out 20 minutes ago. Guess where Joe Lunardi has K-State seated? Go ahead, guess. Go on ahead. Take a guess. Where do you think K-State is seated? They were 7th in his last bracketology. Ladies and gentlemen, they are 4th. Joe Lunardi's got K-State on the 4 line as we speak after last night's action. Kansas State, a number 4 seed. I remind you again that Kansas State was picked last in the Big 12 Conference in the preseason poll. Kansas is a 1 seed, by the way. As far as other Big 12 teams go, he's got Baylor as a 3. And then Texas as a 3. Sorry, Baylor is a 4. Texas is a 3. And then Kansas as a 1. I was reading it wrong, but Kansas State as a 4. And TCU as a 5. He's got Oklahoma State in his last 4 in. Oklahoma in his first 4 out. Texas Tech in his next 4 out. I think Texas Tech is going to end up being pretty good, especially if they get healthy. And 8 of the Big 12's 10 teams in Joe Lunardi's latest bracketology. So that's some happy K-State basketball news that their stock continues to rise. You want to hear something that'll rain on that parade a little bit? Robbie Triano is a producer for SiriusXM Big 12 Radio. And earlier today, in the wake of the firing of Chris Beard at the University of Texas, Jeff Goodman, the college basketball insider, was apparently on SiriusXM's Big 12 Radio and was asked about where Texas goes from here. Who do they look to hire as a long-term solution? Rodney Terry's going to coach out the rest of this season. That was made clear in their statement. It's going to be Rodney Terry the rest of the way. Rodney Terry will be the head coach for Texas. And he's got a pretty good coaching resume. He won 20 games in 4 out of 5 seasons at Fresno State. Historically not the easiest place to win. Then went to UTEP, and he was there for 3 years, and he only left UTEP because he wanted to go be an assistant under Beard. He wanted to get back to Texas, which is his alma. I don't know if it's his alma mater, but he had previously been an assistant there. He was assistant there under Rick Barnes, like back in the mid-2000s. So Rodney Terry's going to coach that program the rest of the year. But beyond that, Jeff Goodman was asked today who Texas should hire, and he said, and I'm quoting from Robbie Triano's tweet on Twitter, "My first call is to Jerome Tang." Now, I do think that would be Texas doing due diligence. After all, they hired Beard away from a Big 12 rival. Why wouldn't they think they could do that again? Why wouldn't they think they have a bigger bag, more resources, greater opportunity in Austin than might be present in Manhattan? Why wouldn't they think that? Whether or not they're right, I can hear you yelling at your radio. They're wrong if they think that. I'm not here to judge that. I'm just saying if you're Texas, that's how you have to approach this. We plucked Chris Beard away when he was the big name. We got him away from a job where he was comfortable, where he had gone to a Final Four, a national championship game. We got him away because we could pay more and we had more opportunity. We had better recruiting base. We had better new arena opening up. We had all this, and we made this long-term commitment. And we can do it again with whoever we want. If you're Texas, that should be your attitude. No price too high. We can get whoever it is that we want because we're Texas. That's their attitude. That's why everybody's so glad they're leaving the Big 12, right? Well, they came after Jerome Tang. Oh, man, the agita that would cause in Manhattan and parts both all east, west, north, and south of Manhattan. I don't know personally that Jerome Tang would entertain that job. I think maybe down the road, if Baylor came vacant, Scott Drew decides to step aside, that might be something that way down the road might entice Jerome Tang. Might be something he's thinking about. But man, for Jerome Tang to leave after 1 year, man, that would be a sign that he had us all fooled. I don't think Jerome Tang's that guy. I don't think he's the kind of guy who's going to be in a place for 1 year and say, yeah, you know what? This money or these resources, these are better than what I've got here. So I'm going to dip after a year. I'm going to make promises, and then after a year, I'm out. I don't think that's Jerome Tang. Based on everything I know about the guy, based on everything I've seen him do, everything I've heard him say, I don't think he's that guy. But like we talked about when Lance Leipold's name started getting thrown around in college football coaching circles, or every time Chris Kleiman's name popped up in the Nebraska coaching search, it's flattering when your coach is mentioned as a hot name. It's flattering to your program. It's flattering to your coach. It doesn't mean anything. Speculation is just that. There's nothing substantive about it, right? There's nothing substantive about it. But it does maybe make your program seem pretty awesome that you've got a coach that other people want. I mean, how long was that the case for KU football, that they didn't have a coach anybody else wanted? They ended up with David Beatty. You know, there weren't programs beating down the door to hire Bruce Weber away in Manhattan. That was never a thing. So idle speculation, treat it as such, take it as a compliment, and keep it moving. But just, be aware. I guess this is me sending a warning shot. Maybe Jeff Goodman sending the warning shot, and I'm the messenger, and don't shoot the messenger. But yeah, Jerome Tang's having the kind of season that A, has K-State considered a top 16 team in the bracketology, and B, is going to get their coach connected to some openings, some bigger openings. But I would put the odds of such a thing happening infinitesimally small. Done with one quarter at Lee Arena. Washburn women trailing Central Missouri 18-14. Strong close to the quarter for the Ichabods. That's where Brendan Brzezinski is on the call. And we will, again, encourage you, if you want to hear Washburn basketball tonight, to go ahead and join the broadcast in progress over on our sister station, Classic Country 106.9. Few final thoughts here, as we've been unable to connect, unfortunately, with Mitch Holtis this afternoon. So we'll get to a few final thoughts here, final 4 minutes or so of the program today. I feel excited about week 18 of the NFL season, and that wasn't really an emotion that I could get to. I couldn't get too excited this week. I couldn't get too fired up about football. I couldn't get to eager to discuss it or eager to consider it. I couldn't get there until I knew good news about Damar Hamlin. And maybe you feel the same. But today, there have been some wonderful bits of information emerging from Cincinnati about Hamlin's progress. And while it is still in the cautiously early portion of things, we don't know for sure where it will go from here, but where it has gone from here has been positive. That Hamlin's neurological condition appears to be intact. He's moving his hands and feet. He's communicating in writing. One of the first things he asked his doctors in writing was, did we win on Monday night? That had to be jarring. So jarring. You're fired up to play a football game, and not just any football game, one of the biggest football games of the season, and you wake up in a hospital 3 days later and you can't talk. I mean, we talk about trauma, right? Emotional trauma. There's physical trauma, and that's a part of football, and we accept that. But emotional trauma is waking up 3 days after you were supposed to be playing in a football game, and you don't know what happened in the game, and you don't know why there's this tube in your throat, and you don't know why you've been sedated for 3 days, and you've got to process all of that. Well, the first thing on Damar Hamlin's mind is, hey, did we win? I'll tell you this, and other people have said this on social media, so this is not a unique perspective or a unique thought, but it is one that I share, and I've seen it again across social media. It's going to be a really cool moment if it hasn't happened already. It's going to be a really, really cool moment when those doctors say, hey, Damar, remember that toy drive fundraiser you did 2 years ago when you were still in college for kids from your hometown, McKees Rocks, the Pittsburgh area? You did GoFundMe, and you wanted to raise $2,500, and you raised about $4,000. You remember doing that? Hey, Damar, you've raised $7.3 million for kids in the last 3 days, because that's what the GoFundMe's up to, close to $7.5 million. That is an awesome deal. Awesome deal. And I will be excited for Damar Hamlin when he gets to hear that news, and excited when he gets better medical news and he gets up and he gets walking. And, hopefully, get best case scenario, he's able to resume his life as before. That may not be possible. We don't know yet, but it feels more possible than it did yesterday. It feels like today was that thumbs up that we were all kind of waiting to see from Damar Hamlin. And for my final word today, I'll just say that it does make me more excited to get back to football. It feels like now that we know Damar Hamlin is going to be okay, or at the very least that he is trending towards being okay, that we can get back to the business of football. We can get back to being excited about these final games and the AFC South Championship game, if you're inclined to get excited about Titans-Jaguars, which, for the record, I have never been in my life until, I guess, this week. I've never been fired up to watch the Titans play the Jaguars, like the ultimate Thursday night game. They should have played that on Thursday night, right? But yeah, I'm eager for football again. And on tomorrow's edition of 580 Sports Talk, Brendan and I are going to break down Chiefs Raiders. We'll give our big chief and predictions and keys to the game, all that fun stuff, and look around at the other action. We'll also be joined by Matt Derrick. He'll come into the show about 3:30 tomorrow afternoon as well. We hope you will join us for that. We thank you for joining us this afternoon and evening for 580 Sports Talk. For Brendan Dworzinski, I am Dan Lucero. This has been 580 Sports Talk, and you're listening to 580 WIBW.